All right, all right, all right. Let's get the show on the road. Oh, music is blasting though. It's weird to be here on a Friday. Kind of makes me reminisce about the old school days when I was still streaming my medieval scene every Friday actually. But that's what we're not here to do today. We're basically picking up slack because I was out for 2 days on Wednesday and Thursday on a little bit of a holiday trip. Had a great old time, and now we're kicking it back into gear because yeah, Whip Wednesday basically moved and it's now Whip Friday for this 1 week. So welcome to this very, very unique, momentous occasion where it's not Whip Wednesday but Whip Friday. But hope everyone is doing well. Hello, Bulborb. Good to see you. How are you doing? Got some tea. Got some leftover dog cookies as well. When Nacho comes roaming in. There we go. Hello, Hector. Good to see you. Welcome back. How are you doing? Let's move this over here. There we go. Then let's see how many people do we have for today. 10 people. Nice. That's good. Hello, Ishtan. I think it's the first time that you're here, so welcome, welcome. Hope you're doing well. What brings you here? A very direct question. But yeah, the week has been going good. I basically had the entire week off, so it's been pretty chill week for me here. I'm kind of trying to take like a holiday break-ish. That doesn't exist when you're doing your own thing, but I'm trying to do it the best that I can. And it was nice. So we went. Hey, Art, welcome, welcome. Oh, you joined on like a weird one because normally we do it on Wednesday, and this is the first time we're doing it on Friday. And it will be the only one that we do on Friday as well, because next week we're gonna go back to the normal cadence. It's just, yeah, timing is off because of the holiday. But yeah, we went to basically we went to visit the place where it all started, where I got my first job in the games industry in Cambridge, working for Frontier Developments. Met up with a couple of my old colleagues, explored our first house where we lived and all that kind of stuff. Seeing how the area has changed as well. It's been interesting. Some of it good, some of it bad. I feel like we were there before kind of like, well, I don't know, the Brexit and COVID and all that stuff happening, and it kind of just decimated like most high streets, but it feels like it's coming back up again. And it was kind of nice to see that like a lot of shops like lots of new leases, a lot of new things happening. It was really interesting. Of course, I don't think a town like Cambridge is going to go anywhere really soon because it's literally driven by the universities. So, but yeah, we spent a day there, we spent the night there as well, and then we basically explored, basically a tour of reminiscing. And then after that, we actually went to Ely, which is like a close time. A close by town, which is really, really nice. A little market town with like a huge cathedral. Had a great time just exploring like the beautiful architecture as well. It is beautiful. So yeah, kind of ashamed that I didn't have my camera with me, but hey, like I said, I wasn't there to do work, you know? So not this time at least. Hello, Aditi. It's been a while catching up. Happy to share. A few months back, I got a role as an environment artist. Thank you for doing this constantly. Oh, that is awesome, Aditi. Congratulations on getting a role. That is amazing. Ah, happy to hear it. Happy to hear it. A few months back. So, are you settled in already? Have you been doing some cool stuff on the project? Obviously, I know that a lot of it is behind NDA, but yeah, I hope you're enjoying your time. And Art is saying, I'm starting a new 3D environment project as my final year. I was looking at some modular building resources, so I just saw you live. Oh, nice. I think we have a project in here that is basically going to be talking about the same thing. So that's going to be interesting. Yes, lots of things going on. That is awesome. Hello, Swan. How are you doing? Welcome, welcome. But yeah, it's gonna be a chill one today. I think we only have like 10 people, so we can take our time comparatively, do some other sessions, which is good. Always enjoy that. So that leaves us with some time to talk as well in the meantime. But yeah, what else have I been doing? I've been playing like a couple of games. I've been playing Blueprints, which was, well, I've completed it already. It was fantastic. I can honestly wholeheartedly recommend the game if you're into like sort of like your puzzle games. We had a lot of fun. We had a shit ton of fun on that. And now I'm kind of diving into Oblivion, the remaster. But I gotta be honest, like that is the first game that I completed like 100%, got all the achievements, all that kind of stuff. So I will explore it, but I'm not gonna complete it, you know? Like, I've seen everything there's to see. It's cool to see what they're doing and that it's getting like a visual uplift. And it's quite nice so far. And I'm kind of just, I don't know, I'll probably explore, sniff in a little bit of nostalgia, and then probably move on to the next thing. But yeah, that will probably be my weekend as well. I'm really struggling to plan modular objects of a manner, so if you can give me some tips and techniques, that would be great. Yeah, I mean, hopefully it depends on what we have on the menu for today, because we have a person who's also getting into some modular stuff, so maybe we can combine some techniques there. I guess we have two people doing some modular stuff on the menu today. So let's see. Special BE live, Tim playing Oblivion. That would be so boring. Because I feel like, what is it? Like, you either need to be like really funny, charismatic, or you need to be really good. And I'm just like, neither of those, you know? Fuck's sake. That sounds so depressing. No, but I mean, like, what I would be doing, like, honestly, in that game, I will be like, ooh, this is cool. This is cool. Oh, what did they do there? Okay, that's cool. That's cool. And just, man, it would just be like your environment art streams. And I can guarantee you, I've seen a lot of people try it. And the reason why there's no one out there doing it is because it's just fucking boring. Yeah, that's about it. And that would be me just doing it live, which makes it like 10 times worse, I feel. Or be like me and be like, oh, I think I put it on like medium difficulty when I got started. And I was one-shotting everything. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to see. I'm going to put it to the max. And then I got like the living hell beat out of me by like a singular goblin. So I was like, oh, okay. The spike is pretty dramatic then. It was pretty funny though. I got absolutely dominated by like a goblin with a fucking kitchen knife. So silly. Okay, we're gonna get started in just a minute. Environment art let's plays, man stares at bricks for 3 hours. Oh yeah. 100%. Like, I wouldn't stare at like singular bricks, but I would try to like reverse engineer how they did things. But I'm like, honestly, with anything in like Unreal Engine, like the techniques that they use, the environment art techniques that they use, right? They're usually not that, I feel like they're not that interesting. There's nothing really like uniquely creative going on that is like, I don't know, technically genius or something like that. I mean, man, I feel like I'm shitting on a whole bunch of developers who are doing really cool stuff that I don't even realize what they're doing, which might also be the case. But I feel like honestly, like a lot of the visual power, the visual interest now just comes from Unreal Engine and Nanite, right? So you see like a lot of geometric density, which is like really cool to see. But it's pretty straightforward in the way that it just like gets set up, right? Like it's just, oh, we just had like higher density meshes to the scene now. And yeah, maybe the texturing technique changes a little bit, but it's not like, for example, it's not like we're doing something like Doom is doing, where they're doing mid-poly workflows and then like decal sheets, and then on top of that like decals. You know, there's not that complexity where it's like, oh my god, there's so many layers to this system. Are there any publicly available projects that are worth looking at? So that is actually one thing that I'll also be doing this weekend. I mean, it's on my own time, but I'll be looking at the project called Talisman. And that is a demo that was released by the Quixel team because they wanted to see how much detail they could cram into an Unreal Engine for Fortnite project. And I've talked about this a couple times before. If you've not seen it yet, it's called Talisman. Have a look at that. If you just look up like Talisman Quixel, you're probably gonna find it. I wanted to have a look at that and then see what is cool about it and see how far I can like distill it, right? But for example, like they had such tight restrictions that they couldn't use like the stereotypical like game art workflow. So what they did is basically the same that I was doing on my medieval project. Is instead of using like RGB mask, where they would store like a lot of like mask data to then decide where like tilables would go on objects in your scene, they would store that directly onto the object by using the vertex color data instead, which is really interesting. And I think like the only reason, I mean, I've talked about this before a couple times, so let's keep this brief, but like the main thing why you wouldn't do that is because like if you store that data onto your vertex colors, that means that if you change your geometry by like your LODs, right? Because you have to still keep performance in mind, that is also going to affect the way that the textures are going to look too. So I wonder how they do that, because they talked about it a lot, but then they didn't go into detail. They didn't go into detail like how the transitions into LODs work. Better have a dense geometry depending on how fine the masks are. No, you don't really need to. Like it's kind of the same thing as like vertex color painting to me, right? Like the base mask can be like really low density, but then you blend it with like additional masks on top of it, which can then also be shared between like multiple materials and all that kind of stuff to kind of get that perceived density again, right? I think the real issue, well, the issue that I was running into specifically is that you're really limited in what you can generate, like what you can bake in the engine. So for example, it might have changed now, but I just had to do, what was it again? AO, and there was AO and something else. I can't remember which second thing that you could bake again using the modeling tools, but it was AO and something else, and that was it. So you kind of have to be like, okay, I can kind of extrapolate, like for example, maybe curvature. Yeah, that would probably make sense. I'm trying to think. I can't remember. Because yeah, then at that point you kind of have to think about like, okay, so if I then want to have like a world-based gradient, then I kind of need to build that into the shader already, because I can't like bake that into the vertex color data, right? Which is fine, but then you're shifting your complexity from your masks, which are usually for us like way easier to author, than doing like a whole bunch of like shader shenanigans, right? So I don't know. I'm really interested to see how they did that and how complex the shaders are and what they kind of used and how the lotting system works, because I have the sneaky suspicion that that is the reason why they took a spaceship, because a spaceship has just like corridors with relatively short sightlines, right? Because let's say if you were to use the same technique on like an open world game, you might see the LOD transitions then breaking apart the texture information from a distance. But yeah, I don't know. I'll have a look at it and then I'll let people know. Maybe I'll talk about it next time as well if I find something out. Let's see. We got some questions as well. So, Marius. Oh, this is a reminder for everyone. This is going to be a relatively chill stream today. So I'm probably going to be blending feedback, which we're going to be diving into in just a second, and also just questions. So if you have any questions, anything you want to discuss, feel free to bring it up and I'll happily talk about it. So talking about questions, Marius here. A quick question for portfolios. Is it better to focus on a lot of modular pieces and trims or bigger scenes and hero assets, or a good mix? My bad for wording. So, well, those are technically like two completely separate things, right? So let's say hero assets are, if you want to become a prop artist, you would focus all your attention into like hero assets, right? Because that is what you want to do. If you want to become an environment artist, we're going pretty broad here, but if you want to become an environment artist, then focusing on modular pieces, trims, and being smarter with the resources that you have or build, that is more the route of an environment artist. To make a good scene though, you have to have a blend between the two, because for example, there's only so far that you can go with the visual complexity when it comes to a hero asset by using, I don't know, trims or tilables, right? You can get there, you can get pretty far, but at that point, you're probably talking about like a shader that is like really complex and like a whole bunch of like things and yeah, things that you need to tweak to get there. That is probably just easier to do it as like a singular prop if it's that important to the scene. So yeah, usually like a blend between the two is probably the ideal way of thinking about it, so that you can, anything that needs to have high quality, you do uniquely. Anything that needs to have scalability, you do modularly. Right? That's usually the way that I think about things. Toa is asking, do you play video games or are you too busy for that now? No, I try to make time for video games. I feel like lately I've been picking back up like a couple of video games. I said before that I was playing Blueprints, which was awesome. Really loved that game. The ending kind of was a little bit underwhelming because of the situation that we were in, but I don't want to spoil anything. So, but I still would recommend the game though. Like, such a great game. And now I'm getting into the Oblivion remaster. But yeah, I've played that game before. I've maxed it out. I have all the achievements on it when I was playing it originally on Xbox as a kid. So yeah, I'm probably just gonna, I don't know, either it becomes one of those games that I'll pick up because it's comfort food and I'll just keep it installed and just play it for like 30 minutes like every evening, or I'll just keep hopping between like indie games. That's more the thing that I'm into now. Hello, Puns. Good to see you here. I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Have a week off, so that's probably why I'm playing more video games as well. Because I do love to keep busy. But yeah, if anyone has any more questions, feel free to ask them and then we can chat about it. In the meantime, let's get cracking on some feedback. So yeah, how are you doing, Puns? You doing good? Okay, since we wanted to talk about modular pieces, let's start with that, right? So I don't know if Keita has any questions. We're probably gonna start with Alejandro first. Where is Alejandro in the list? Oh, here we go. Here we go. So I think this is gonna be a modular scene as well. So let's see. I've finally been able to start a new personal project to chip away at, just a couple of days from the initial gray box, just looking for early feedback on composition, ideas, overall things I should look out for that I'm maybe not catching. Okay, so it's not necessarily about like modular stuff. But I'll give a couple of tips anyway. So, at this stage in early Greybox, if you are thinking about modular assets, I would at this point already start building it in like a modular way. You can do modularity in like so many different ways though, especially now that the stereotypical way of thinking about modularity is that you just make like a wall, a roof, another wall, a door, all that kind of stuff. But usually with those kits, you have to be really careful that you don't make your environment feel stale, right? So usually you have to have like your core kit and then you have like a bunch of accessories that you put on top of it so that you can make your box that you've built like way cooler than it is before, right? So that would be one way of doing modularity. Another way of doing modularity is not necessarily in that stereotypical way, but let's imagine something like an Assassin's Creed game, right? They do modularity in a slightly different way where they use a combination of modules and then they have, well, I'm just making assumptions here, right? But just from looking at it, I think they work with like a lot of shells for the buildings. So that means that you can make a shell for a building that looks like really unique. And then they can build into that building with modular pieces, right? So that's like a more hybrid combination of the two, which could work really well because then you have a more unique silhouette that you get to play with as the house. And then the modular pieces are still just like your bog standard modular pieces. They just work way better because the building itself has a more unique silhouette already, right? So you don't struggle with, oh, how do I make this look like cool again? Because I'm working with like a modular kit. So yeah, not necessarily about modularity for this piece then either, but yeah, I hope that was a little bit helpful for, let's see, for Art. Art, feel free to ask questions like what is the big thing you're struggling with? Is it just planning, the planning aspect of it? Because if you're doing a manor, yeah, you kind of just need to break it down into like its core pieces, right? I mean, it sounds so simple, but honestly, I feel like if you're stuck planning, you need to get out of your head and just do things, right? So the quickest, I always try to do this for myself as well. Like if I'm stuck, I need to find a way to unblock myself. And usually that means that I need to get out of my head and do stuff. So whenever I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is gonna work, like you don't know, so you might as well try. So at that point, what I would do is I would just start building like all the different modules that you need and start building a house. This doesn't need to even be inside of Unreal Engine, right? You can just do that in Blender and you can make everything an instance of itself. So you could basically build a house and then whenever you update like your base instance, whatever update you do to that one is already going to propagate to like the house that you built, right? So yeah, that could be a good way of testing it out because sometimes we're just way too much in here and we need to put stuff into play, right? Marius, there's no dumb questions, but do you use modular pieces in Engine or in something like Maya or Blender and export it assembled? No, so the way that you do it is the first one, right? So you make the individual pieces and then you assemble it in the engine. Because the benefit of doing that there is whenever you have like, let's say a 4-meter wall and you use that 4-meter wall multiple times, it's not like you're using like a totally new asset. It is basically gonna already have that wall stored in your memory, right? Not in your fucking brain memory, but like your actual PC memory. And that's gonna make it cheaper to have like the second one and the third one and the fourth one and all that kind of stuff, right? So basically, if you have the whole kit like separated in the engine already, if you build one house, You use like once, it lowers draw calls. Yeah, exactly. If you have one house, let's say it's all made out of like one element, let's say, so like one wall, one door, one roof, whatever. The more houses you build, the cheaper it's gonna get, right? Because we're getting more, what would it say? Yeah, we're getting more bang for your buck, right? Hello, Sergui. Hello, Vikram. Hello, Harry. Good to see you all here. How are you doing? Yeah, but that's basically how it's done, right? So you would build them separately. This is the thing that a lot of people have questions about in our community as well. You use a batch exporter, which basically just allows you to have like your entire kit set up the way that you want in, let's say, Blender. And then you use like a batch exporter to individually just like batch everything out as like separate assets. And that makes it really, really quick to like update like entire modular kits. Just something to say hi. Hello, Anchor. Good to see you. How are you doing? Yeah, I'm doing good as well. Doing good as well. Had 2 days off. Got back yesterday. And now back into the swing of things. So catching up on stuff. But yeah, let's see. So Alejandro is asking, just looking for some early feedback on composition, ideas, overall general things that I should look out for. Okay, so the first question is, and this is probably a common question. So, what is the focal point? Right? That's the big question you need to figure out first. Where are we looking? Right? Or like, where do you want us to look? Because right now we have like a couple of big buildings that look really interesting, but they might be background. You have this street, which is basically forcing you to look like there somewhere, right? Because like the street is kind of just like forcing you into that direction. But there's nothing here yet. So even at this early stage, for example, if you want this to be your focal point, right? Think about like how you can emphasize that being the focal point more, right? So for example, if you then put like a bigger wall here, if you put like a bigger wall, or this building is going to come like a little bit forward, right? And then let's see, we maybe tighten up this area as well, so that we're tightening the space. We're maybe making this like a little bit of an overhang or an arch or something like that. That what we're trying to do is we're trying to have you look there more, right? So that's basically, even at this early stage, you would want to block people from basically getting distracted, right? And then we can obviously add more stuff here. So let's, even in the blockout, you could already have, okay, let's say there's a couple of tables here. There's just some cubes. Cool stuff, a couple of tables. And then we can start playing around with this, right? But that would be the first thing to figure out, is what is the focal point? Where do you want us to watch, right? Secondly, something that we just talked about is your modular kit. Test early. Especially because this is your first time making a scene at scale, you need to figure out like how many pieces you need to make to really visualize the whole environment, right? So basically you look at it as like, okay, we're building a puzzle, right? We do not know the amount of pieces of the puzzle we have currently, right? So our blockout is basically us figuring out how big the puzzle is gonna be and how many pieces we need to make that puzzle, right? So at this point, you're still figuring out if it's gonna be like 100-piece puzzle or a 1,000-piece puzzle, right? At this stage, it's really hard to define that. So that's why I'm saying this modular kit, test it early and test it a lot, right? And really put it through its paces and make sure that you can, just get the most bang for your buck, right? Because that also helps later on in production where you know that like, oh, this piece is going to be used like more than once, right? Because then you're not building something that is going to be used once, like all the way in the background. Maybe you can just use something else in this place, right? Because it's always about like working smarter, not harder in this case. I mean, it's always a combination of the two, but definitely working smarter first. So test early. Because the more we figure out now, the less we have to figure out later. Because what also happens is, let's do like a graph, right? So this is the beginning and the end of your project. And basically your production time just increases over time. That means that if we do a change here, so if we do like change number 1 here, that is a low amount of impact on the amount of time. However, if we try to do a change here, let's say, ooh, I think I'm going to add like another street and I don't have the items for it yet. That is a high impact change, right? So what we want to avoid is that we do a lot of testing here to make sure that we don't do these high impact changes later down the line. Because those ones, like the high impact changes, they are project killers. So if you get to that stage and you're like, oh man, if I really want to make it better, I would need to do this and this. But that also means that I need to put in like a shit ton of time again. You don't want to do that at that stage because you've already been in it for like a couple of weeks. So be careful with that. Let's see. Do you recommend making Lego pieces at 2-meter increments, or or does it depend? So yeah, it totally depends. I would not go lower than 0.5. Ideally, what you do is you pick the biggest measurement that works for the style of buildings that you're going to go for. So for example, if you're building something like New York, your increments are going to be like way bigger because you can make those blocks just way easier with bigger measurements, right? If you then want to do something like, let's see. Maybe you want to build something like from the medieval ages, let's say a Gothic inspired town or something like that. It will probably be more likely that you would have like more detail pieces, which would require you to go like lower down on the grid size, right? Because you're working with like more detailed pieces. You want to have stuff look more uniquely as well. So that's basically what controls like how big or how small you need to go. But in those cases, you should always go for the highest possible one before you're going to move down. Because again, it comes down to like a grafting again, right? Where if you work at bigger size increments, it's way easier to iterate. So like the sooner you go down, it's going to increase like your time that you're going to spend on it. Awesome. I've been using Blender for scale and measurements and exporting the pieces separately. Thanks so much. Yeah, so that works, right, Marius? If you have a mannequin or a character reference that you have in Blender or in whatever modeling program you use, and oh, what was that? Oh my god, I think it just spazzed out. Let's see. Yeah, but that works, right? So you can do the same thing, get like a character reference in there, and as long as you're making something that is like real world scale accurate, you're fine. It doesn't matter really where you do the measurements, but yeah, I mean, ideally you want to get it right from the first time. Anchor is asking, I have a question. Do we make all modular pieces into the blueprint or static meshes is fine? When should we make them into a blueprint? I would honestly never make them into a blueprint. I would do them now as a what are they called again? A packed level actor, I think. And there's also something called like level instances too. I would probably do it in those because they are way easier to use. A blueprint was the old way before a religion woke up that people are going to use this for like bigger scale projects, finally. Yeah, I would never use a blueprint because if you're making something like pretty elaborate, you are going to notice that a blueprint only goes up until a certain point, like a certain complexity, and then it really slows down. It's really shit at a certain point. So a blueprint is more for like if you want to add like some like programmatic thing that attaches to it, right? But yeah, pack level actors is basically what they invented to replace those things then. So today I was a little bit too late, but hello everyone. Hello Healthy Game Dev, good to see you. So yeah, that is, I mean, it kind of goes up to complexity question again, right? If you're, let's say if you're doing a scene like this, I would honestly not do it with like any packed level actors or like any level instances or whatever Unreal Engine offers, because the scale is not there, right? The reason why, so I was looking into it because of the Matrix demo. If you have the time, check that demo out, because it is really interesting how they use like packed level actors, because they do like instancing. So they have like smaller packed level actors stacked in bigger packed level actors, and that's how they make like these large complex buildings that are still made out of like similar constructed like elements, which is really cool. Even for smaller repetitional pieces, or do you just all do it in the environment? No, it again, it comes down to like how much reuse you have in your environment, right? Because let's say you spend a lot of time to make it into this packed level actor and then you use it once in your environment, that defeats the purpose, right? So honestly, like this kind of stuff, if you're doing personal work, it is only applicable in like 2% of people's portfolio pieces, I would say. Because we're really talking about a scale where we're talking about building like cities, right? So for the most part, for your personal work, you're probably not going to need it. Because even in a scene like this, the one that we have on screen right now, you're going to see the repetition, let's say if you use two similar buildings. So it's better to spend a bit more time making them more unique, and then, yeah, potentially having like a group that you just have and then just duplicating it for like background assets. So keeping it really simple for the stuff. But let's see. Yeah. So yeah, back to Alejandro's work. We talked about the focal point. We talked about the modular kit, how to test early. And number 3, we're gonna go broad strokes today. Story. What is the story for this place? Because the story is gonna impact everything. I know that I hammer on this constantly, but I really mean it, because if you have a story, if you have a setting, all that kind of stuff is gonna dictate like how tall your assets are gonna be, like how they look, like what the style of them is. It's gonna be really impactful to your scene. Not everyone, everything. Cool. Yeah, but thank you so much for the questions, everyone. Always appreciate it. Let's see. But yeah. Really, I think we talked about like some good stuff. When it comes to the composition, I think the first point is definitely gonna be important. Also looking to potentially making certain areas more interesting. An easy thing that I try to do in all the environments that I touch is, can we add verticality somehow? Because even right now, you have like a little bit of verticality in the back, maybe. But like, let's say even in this overpass, right? We add like a little staircase or something. That is already gonna be like pretty interesting. And then you kind of have like this space over here. Let's say that becomes like a staircase as well. And that staircase goes up to like the upper floor, and there's like a balcony here, and right, so we got like a balcony going. It's like an upper area. And then maybe we got like another staircase going down here. We're adding like depth to the environment without really doing like a whole lot, right? We're just adding like a couple of steps here and there, but it adds like complexity, and it adds like a certain type of like organicness to the whole environment too. Which always looks like really interesting, especially for something that you probably want to feel a little bit more run down, because I think you're going for a story that has contrast with like the big buildings in the back, and then now we're looking at it from like the small downtrodden area, right? So those areas, they have a lot of like random elevation because people just keep building and building and building, and regulation is less strict in those areas, usually, right? So yeah, try to play into that as well. Get some cool little sight lines going. Nice. But yeah, thanks for showcasing your work, Alejandro. Best of luck. Hey, Sia, how you doing? Let's see. Next one is Long Pig. I've redone the lighting and blocked out some hero props. I've added some simpler props for storytelling purposes. Two big things that I need some feedback and guidance on. I really want to show off my materials, but I feel like at the moment the detail in the materials gets lost. Is it a lighting issue? Yes. So it really is a lighting issue, and also it is an issue of your material choice. So we have our main focal point here, right? Or like at least, oh, what's happening? Let me just add a new layer here. So we basically want to make this like our focal point, right? So this is gonna be our, well, focal area, let's say, because it's not really a point. Great, okay, we got the lighting. We got like a first pass of the lighting coming in. That is nice. And I feel like in terms of contrast of the lighting, it's already a good balance, because the focus is more on the area that we want to look at, right? I think the main issue is this is almost pure black. And that is not something that we tend to see a lot, especially on like a desk. If you think about a desk, especially something that looks maybe not, it could even be metallic, right? Because it kind of looks like metal-ish as well. It just looks really unrealistic at the moment in terms of like the material that's being used, right? But also think about it from like an artistic perspective, right? Think about what the color black does to us. Like it basically it's always evoking like a darker emotion, right? So it's not really like a happy thing. It adds like a lot of contrast, especially with the props that are on there as well. But in your case, it also just fades into the background, right? Because the area around it is dark, which is okay. That's something we can work with. But then if you have a dark table, that means that's going to blend in the background as well. So we got to work on that material by itself first, and then also the table itself, right? Because it blends into the background. I'm picking up something here though, because you're saying I want to show off my materials. I feel at this point, it's not about the materials yet, and you're kind of putting the cart in front of the horse, or whatever the saying is. Focus on the environment. Like, look at references from like an actual office environment and see the furniture that they use. Try to make it as time specific as you can so that you can get as close to the truth as possible. And try to replicate that, right? See what materials they use, see what lighting they use, and try to replicate those things. That is gonna help massively. Because right now, you might be focusing on like, oh my god, I need to make this look really good, this one material for the table. But focusing on the bigger picture and focusing on like, okay, I need more references, I need to know where I'm coming from, is probably gonna do you more good than focusing on like just a single thing right now. So I would say definitely more references. And also, I would honestly, yeah, I was gonna say maybe look at some more lighting tutorials. There were some great ones from William Foucher. I don't know if we shared those before. Yeah, so okay. So you got like a reference here, right? This is from like your earlier post. Right? It's gonna be like pretty low res. But you can see what it's doing, right? So yes, this scene has like a black desk, right? But what it's doing is it's really evenly lit. And I know that we said in the beginning that we weren't gonna do that, but there is still a way that we can balance those things out, right? So we can keep the scene evenly lit and then still reinforce the desk being like the main point of attraction, like the main focal point, by elevating and balancing the levels of your lighting between the two, right? Also, as well, what is going to happen, and that's maybe what's missing here, is that usually we have something that's called like an HDRI, which is like a high dynamic image, which is basically going to be used as a reflection for your whole scene. And that could help you kind of just brighten up like the dark spots as well. So, yeah. An HDRI image. And that's going to help you get some like nice reflections and all that kind of stuff as well. Because it's difficult for me to kind of estimate what's happening here. I kind of have the feeling that we don't have a skylight. So let me break this down. So we have our directional light, and I'm talking about like more exterior lighting, but let's go with it. So we have your skylight, and basically they have two different purposes, right? So your direct light is your sun. So that's going to cast like direct shadows. It's going to cast direct light on like all the objects in the world, right? What a skylight is going to do though, it is going to simulate the light bouncing off of those surfaces and kind of just acting like a fill light. So it's going to be bouncing around light, and it's going to make everything in the world like lighter. Because if you look outside, like all the surfaces are always reflecting and like bouncing light around. So that is what is missing here. So we are missing basically an indirect light source. I would look at some of the William Foucher stuff. Like he has a beginner course on how to do lighting in Unreal, and he will probably talk about that too. But that is basically what an HDRI is, right? So that is going to be like an indirect light source that is going to elevate the rest of your scene up a little bit more. Because yeah, even if we were to brighten up the whole scene, right? To kind of make it more in line with what you see in your ref, for example, we would still need to have a way that we can infuse and introduce indirect lighting in the scene as well. But it becomes a little bit easier when you have like a lot of light and a lot of stuff bouncing, because Lumen kind of does its thing with that. Let's see. What else can we talk about? The second question was, how can I approach a busy scene without making it feel too noisy or overloading the eye? So there's so many ways of doing that. Okay, let's see if I can name like a couple of things. So we're really talking about res versus detail, right? Like, how do you balance those two? Number one is placement. Where you place props and assets in the scene, if you cluster them together, that's already going to help a lot. So clustering is a very common technique. For example, you do that here with this cluster down on the left. That is good because we're not scattering paper all over the place. We're putting it in like a designated place where we have a high amount of detail versus a low amount of detail. So that works. We just need to do the same thing on the table as well, right? So have a cluster of stuff, let's say here, and then try to keep the rest like a little bit more open, or maybe have like a secondary cluster over here or something like that, right? Or in that case, you could go like a little bit more specific where you have high density objects, like your phone or whatever, and then you have your low density objects, which are like your pieces of paper. So the more detail that they have, the more, and I talk about detail in the broadest sense, right? So that could be geometric detail, that could be textural detail, and that also could be lighting detail as well. Yeah, so placement is a big one. We kind of talked about some of the other ones as well. So geometric details, so how complex of an object is also going to attract attention to itself. Texture detail. And then lighting, right? A lot of this comes down to contrast. Because we're always looking at it from like a broader perspective, right? So listen to what I was saying about the phone, right? If we have a high density object, like a phone with a lot of buttons and a lot of stuff happening on it, and then we put like a couple of pieces of paper next to it, that's not going to be that big of an issue because that paper is not going to be asking for like a lot of attention compared to the telephone, right? And it's really thinking about like, okay, like where am I drawn to? What do you think is just like, it's just like, I don't know what we want to focus on. If it kind of feels like icky, you need to kind of just, sometimes what I'll do is like, I'll go back to basics. So for example, I'll clean up the entire table, just remove everything, and then just start from like the highest density thing. So for example, okay, I have the telephone and I have something else. Cool. Where do I put them first? Okay, this kind of makes sense. And then start adding like the other things because they have more flexibility, right? So yeah. Chaotic little talk. It's almost like a mini lesson here. But there's so much to this. I would love to just talk about the topic of contrast because, oh my God, like I feel like that's the biggest thing that I can just talk about for ages on. So yeah, I'll probably have to make some time to do that at some point. But yeah, thank you for posting your work, Long Pig. Best of luck. Just to reiterate, like focus on the lighting first, right? And then see what needs to be done on the materials. And then work your way down to like, okay, how do I clean up the scene? Because I have the feeling once you figure out the lighting, once you figure out the materials, I don't think you're gonna even struggle with the point of, yeah, just too much clutter in the scene. I don't think that's going to be an issue anymore, because I think a lot of the noise currently comes from the highly contrasted tones that you have, right? Bright pieces of paper, black desk, right? You can literally not get any stronger contrast. So we have to sort of manage that. Cool. Keep it moving. Let's do rat first. The last and the final version, as a level corrupted and sent me back 2 weeks and I don't want to do it all. Okay. Seems like that happened a couple times already. So, I'm gonna just add, you know, the first recommendation is to look into like a proper backup solution, honestly. Maybe doing it on Google Drive for now for your active projects. Yeah, make sure that you back up your projects, or yeah, have them on source control or whatever you want to do, right? Source control is free for yourself under like a certain amount of data usage, I think. So make use of that, right? Make use of it. Cool. But I was planning to add this to the next week Wednesday, and I probably still will, but I can't edit it. So that also means that we're probably going to keep it like pretty simple. I changed the texturing to be a bit more bold and less subtle, but I'm not sure. Oh, you're talking about like the wood? I don't mind it. I think with this kind of stuff, it's more about like, how do you break it up, right? Because it doesn't matter if you increase the contrast between, let's say, the wood veins and just the bare wood. It's more about like, how do you break that general pattern up, right? So potentially having one that is more contrasty and less contrasty, and then just blending between the two with vertex painting or whatever you want to do. That is always going to be really helpful to kind of break that up even more, right? But I do like it generally though. Let me actually do a comparison real quick here. Yeah, I do like it way more. It's less brown and it's more intense on the wood grain, which I think is a good choice. So I think you've done well there. Compared to, I think 2 weeks ago, let's see. Yeah, something like 2 weeks ago. Man, chat is freaking out today. What is happening? I guess you're not seeing it on your side, so that's good. So less saturation plus... That works. I think the texture itself works really well. And you change the grass to be less flat, but I'm not sure if it's too noisy or not. I think an easy way to do this is just have a couple of patches that are just taller, right? So for example, around the legs, because yeah, God knows it's annoying to cut grass around like objects, right? So have like a couple of patches where you kind of have like a gradient of grass going up. And this works in our favor because it kind of just like, it kind of blends the two like really nice, you know? So sometimes us being humans and kind of getting lazy about stuff like really helps with just like blending shapes from like an artist perspective, you know? So let's make use of that. But yeah, and the final thing, the roof texture. Yeah, honestly, great stuff on the roof texture. Is that the latest version? Let me see. Making doubly sure here. I don't think this one is the latest version. Let's see. Is it? Yeah. No. I don't think it is. Some of these are. I think some of the images got mixed. But for example, this guy, over here, let's see, what did you do in your latest one? Oh, I guess it is. Okay. It's still there. But with this one, you kind of just want to add like kind of a fan. And this is just like stretching out the bottom, but that we get like a little bit of like a fan like texture going on, you know? Just because right now it feels like it's a straight line, but next time doing it as like a fan that kind of just like fans out in certain areas, that could work. And then you could play with the spacing and have like a couple of fans and then no fan, and you could do some cool stuff with that. And then just do the same thing here, right? So the same thing that you're doing with the other ones, have it come across the sides. And the benefit here as well is we can lift up the inner parts of the fan as well, so that we get like, I don't know, again, it comes down to the word that I can't spell, which I honestly should by now. Silhouette, right? Silhouette is the most important thing, because that is the thing that's going to draw so much attention to itself, that if we can play around with the shape, that is always going to be to the benefit. And you've done such a good job with like the wood itself. Feels like really nice and organic, that the same can be done with the roof as well. Cool. But I guess that's it to be said, because yeah, like you said yourself, you're not going to continue working on it, which is a shame. But yeah, I hope you learned a lot, and yeah, maybe, who knows, maybe you find like the Holy Grail and kind of find a way back to the project, you know, at some point. Hello, Dad. Hello, Mikval. How are you both doing? And how are you doing, Sia? I kind of forgot to ask that. In the meantime, let's go for Maxence. There's probably not going to be too much to say there. Maxence is working on an Elden Ring scene, and I'm working on the lighting. I was wondering if you guys had some ideas to improve it. Lighting in Elden Ring games, disclaimer, I have not played any Elden Ring games. Well, I've not played Elden Ring or any of the Dark Souls games apart from the first one, which was like, apparently I did not do myself favors by playing only the first one with a mouse and keyboard on Steam at that point, because it was not supported and it was absolute hell. So unwillingly, I was playing the first Dark Souls on hard mode for a game that's already in hard mode. So yeah, not a good intro. But let's see. I think overall though, like this is great already. You know, got a couple of patches of light that are just like attracting you to certain places here, which was really well. And then the rest of it is kind of has like this green foul thing in the air, and then obviously like a big tree in the back, which it's definitely out there. I mean, just from like Elden Ring's perspective, having that like vista that you can see from over probably the whole world, I'm assuming, gives you like a nice orientation point though. So it's a very intense but like a very clever way to always give you like a guiding point, like a North Star basically, right? But yeah, it is definitely an artistic choice that if I was the art director on that game, I would probably not have made. But then I'm also not a successful art director that keeps blasting out like really interesting looking ways to like make new environments. So there's also that at the same time. So I'm saying this not as in like, oh, I don't like it, this is shit. It's more like, I think I feel so uncomfortable doing something like this that it's more like a bold statement of just like, no, we're just gonna do this like massive glowing tree in the background, which is like freaking awesome. Eric, sorry, the submission is already done for today, but any member from our community can basically tag their work up every Wednesday Yes, it's not Wednesday. It's because I was out on Wednesday, so we kind of moved it 2 days along. But yeah, every member can basically tag their week up, their work up every week to get seen and get some feedback. So yeah, all you have to do is to become a member. But this shot is really cool though. I really like the roughness response that we're getting on the door itself. Just like, it's a subtle way of just like increasing the importance of it. And then just having like these couple of spots of colors again works really well. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, there's not gonna be too much to say on this. I think lighting works great. Honestly, good job on it. Because it is a bold, it is a bold look, but I feel like from my very surface level understanding of it, I feel like you nailed it. So yeah, cool stuff. And it's definitely up your alley in terms of like art style as well. So great choice too. Hello, Evie. Hope I'm not late to the party. No, you're never late to the party. Welcome, welcome. How are you doing? So yeah, I think lighting works great. Nothing really for me to add on here. Doing some good choices. The lighting feels more balanced as well. I wonder if you can potentially add like 2 additional like lighting islands here, what that would do. Maybe it's too much. I don't know. Definitely would play around with it though. And then potentially, I know that I'm adding some last minute things. But what you could play around with lighting is just having something that is going to be repeated. So let's say it's like a torch or something like that. And then having that repeated in the background as well. Because then we're kind of smashing like a whole bunch of things together where we can have interesting lighting because we're guiding people down this path, which is kind of what we want to do, right? So we're kind of putting extra emphasis there as well. But I think what's also really interesting from that is that we get a direct scale comparison, because if we add like a torch in the foreground, let's say, if it is a torch, it can be any object, right? Really. And we kind of see the repetition. It gives us like a feeling of wonder, or like a sense of scale, really, where if we then see like a couple of them down here, and we realize that these like tiny things, they're also the same thing as in the foreground. So we build like a relationship between those elements. That could potentially be something to look into. But yeah, that's about it that I have to add, Maxen. So awesome work. Looking forward to what you're going to do to the scene, honestly. Looking forward to seeing it grow. So yeah, cool stuff. Keita is next. So let's have a look. I just added like a bunch of stuff in here. I don't know if you want me to look at like everything, but let's see. How should I change the flowers and the clover? Hello, Healthy Game Dev. Good to see you. Hey. Hi, chat. How are you doing, A? So let's see. We were talking about like the flowers, right? I think this kind of depends on you, but I would use the flowers as more like a pop of color and kind of add some. Oh no, the screenshot is fine. I would add some like pops of color and add some like saturation to the scene. So, especially in certain areas, right? Like these guys, maybe this one. I'll explain my thought process in a bit. So I'm thinking about like more flower saturation. And the reason why I have those encircled is because those are the ones that are closest to the actual building, right? So we kind of want to keep it sort of condensed to the building itself, because if we're going to add like a lot of pops of color down on the outskirts, that might distract a little bit. It's something worth trying though, but that could definitely be interesting. When it comes to the clovers, let's see. Oh, maybe you're also just talking about like what to do with the flowers. Yeah, I would definitely have like some. Would definitely have some colorful flowers, you know. Could be cool. And you could kind of trial and error this, right? So have like a cluster that has like 2 flowers, and that allows you to like basically be like really careful with where you place them to see if it even works. Because that's also the balance in here, right? Like the closer that you get to the house, maybe you have more flowers, and then the further you go away, you can have like less flowers and it's more clovers. Because I'm kind of thinking from like a color perspective, right? Where you have a lot of basically anything inside of this little cloud shape is where you want to infuse color, right? Because that's where you want people to look. And then anything outside of it, you could have like a gradient of just being more green, right? Can you remove the stems from the small ones? Yeah. But it kind of depends on how much geometry you're adding to it. So if you're saving like a whole bunch of color, a whole bunch of topology and geometry by removing the stems, then maybe, yeah. If it's only just like a singular plane, for the amount that I see, it's not going to be worth it, honestly. But yeah, you can kind of see the stems here, which do add like a nice thing to it, right? But yeah. And then green outside. I thought they are very noisy. Not really, because the way that I look at it is you look at it from this distance, right? Let's say we grab the whole image. They are relatively similar in color. They don't really have like a lot of shadowing going on. So there's no real contrast. The only thing that really adds a contrast is the shape. But I'm not bothered by them like specifically. If that really bothers you though, like try to add like more clusters instead of just having them like scattered around, right? And try to like nitpick like which ones are just like the most annoying ones for you. So for example, let's say these guys, because they're like at the edge of the grass. So maybe you want to remove those two. But I mean, we're getting very nitpicky at that point, right? I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but yeah. Let's see. Is the smoke okay? Yeah. It is. It is very dark though. Which I don't know. So I feel like what we could do with this image, and this is sort of where like your personal style kind of comes into, right? Is we can really bump the saturation values. Maybe not too much, right? But let me give some stuff a try. And then we can do like a before and after comparison. Mm-hmm. I also don't want to make it too intense. Okay, let's see. Yeah. So I think you can be like more pushy with the colors and like really go for it, you know? Let me disable my overpaint as well. Where are we looking here? No, not that one. Right? And like really make it like more eye-catchy, because I feel everything feels, you know what it feels like? It kind of feels like this is a stately house that is still very rural, but like the industrial age came in and like everything just has like a smog filter on it. That's kind of how it feels like, if you know what I mean. So maybe just like pushing the values and making it more, yeah, more intense on the colors, perhaps. I know that we got carried away a little bit. Let's get back on track. So the reason why I wanted to bring that up, and I'm gonna bring it back to like the whole industrial age kind of thing, like I'm not, the only thing that I'm not a big fan of is, I love the smoke itself. The only thing that I don't like is the gray. Like the very dark, almost like it's very serene, but then you have these chimneys that are just like very pollutant, you know? It's almost like they're burning like some like, I don't know, heavy stuff in there. So the bottom of the smoke is a little bit too dark. I'm always bad with colors, so it will be a good exercise. Oh, so what I would do in that case, because I know this is not easy, right? And I'm just kind of doing things on the fly, and everyone kind of has their own kind of like opinion on it too. Well, it's your art still, right? But what I would do is have a couple of examples. So let's say you go for a less saturated one, your current one, and then a more saturated one, and then see whatever you gravitate towards. But give it some time. So let's say you take like 3 screenshots. You do them just in Photoshop, just like I did, and then next day you go to sleep. Next day you wake up, you look at it again, and just see if you still feel the same about it. Because you might be like, oh, now with fresh eyes, I look at it differently, so I'm just gonna go for this. And I think if you do that exercise a couple of times, like during the project, you could end up with something that you probably didn't anticipate that you were gonna do in the beginning. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get you to look at things with fresh eyes, rather than just always being like nose to the grindstone, like, oh, I'm so in the trenches with this project, right? So sometimes making use of like downtime, let's say you go away for a weekend or whatever, get those screenshots ready and then look at them again with fresh eyes. That is always really helpful with this stuff. Or you can leave it to anyone else as well. Get that same like lineup where you have the 3 ones next to each other, send it as one image, A, B, and C, and let people vote, right? Which one they kind of want. That could also be a good way to do it. Yopamin is coming in. I would fade the smoke over life to make it less jarring, if my advice is aight. Yeah, of course. So basically fading out the smoke more, right? That's what that's gonna do. If I'm correct. Fernando saying, oh man, I forgot my feedback was today. No, yeah, I know. We're back to regular schedule from next week. It's gonna be on Wednesday again. But yeah, for this one time, we're doing it on Friday because I was off on Wednesday. So yeah, let's see. What else is there? It also flickers a tiny bit on the video. Should I only post screenshots then? Fixing it would take me a whole while since I'm not a VFX pro. I would keep it in there because like a video also always does way better in terms of like selling, right? Like getting people to actually look at your stuff. A video is always going to be cooler. What I would do is reach out to a person that you know who has done some VFX, or yeah, maybe an industry professional, right? And talk to them and see if they can help you. Because if it's like a specific thing like this, I'm sure that they know like an easy fix and it's not going to take them a whole lot of time to respond. So yeah, just reach out to some people. The scenes don't blend well into the scene. They're the only thing that is like really specular, and I saw other Ghibli scenes covering up the window panes with wood a lot, but I don't want to do it since it doesn't make sense for the scene. So that's why this image down here is here. I took a screenshot from Jasmine Habasai Factory's work because I noticed that she did some windows. And she's kind of running into the same thing, right? And I think she purposely made like the wood frames like really thick and chunky so that the rest of it kind of just becomes less important, right? And I think that's a great technique that you could potentially also embed into your scene as well. So having like a wooden frame that breaks this up a little bit more could be interesting as well. And you can do a different pattern, you can do a different style. You have flexibility with that as well, right? But that's going to be helpful for sure. Like helping to break that up a little bit as well. That could be cool. And then also, yeah, thinking about, I don't know, maybe a different color, maybe a less bluish color, so less saturated, so that we're going down to something that's more neutral in color. That could potentially be interesting as well. I'm just thinking from like a color perspective, right? Something that kind of just blends a little bit. Something like this color, perhaps. Let me add her full name here. I stopped writing midway through. So yeah, that could potentially be an interesting one to have a look at. Break it up there. Should I add color things like painted window shields, a door, and maybe some cloth hanging around? Or maybe that would be too noisy. So that is one great example of try to get stuff in that you want to experiment with, right? Because sometimes you just need to try it. And then you can do the same thing that I was saying before, right? You can have a before and after, and then compare side to side, and then have a look at what it looks like. Because it could be fun. So let's see, what were your ideas? Like painted window shields, a door, and maybe I guess the door will be painted as well, and then maybe some cloth hanging around. It could be too noisy. But it could also be like really cool that, let's see, what will we do? It can add a lot of story, right? Just thinking, what could we do? Because yeah, like even Jasmine does it in like a very subtle way, right? Like overall, like that doesn't take away too much attention, but it just adds like a little bit, right? So like a little potted plant on the windowsill with just like something hanging from it is not going to take away too much from the whole scene. What I was thinking was maybe like some clothes on or like a washing line or something like that, but that wouldn't really make sense unless we're kind of doing it here, right? So let's say there's like a wooden beam sticking out, and then we kind of have like a clothesline that's kind of going into that tree, and then we kind of see like clothes hanging in the back. Because you already have this cool element here, and I think that works great. So yeah, give it a try. Give it a try. For the window shields, I think you might be right. It kind of depends on what you're going to paint on it. Because if you just pick like a darker pattern, it could work. If you're going for like really vibrant, it might not. Yeah. Give it a try though. Cool stuff. Let's see. When I do close-up shots, I feel like I need a trim sheet to make it look a lot better. Let's have a look at the close-up shots. No, I personally don't think so. But it does come down to something that I said last week, though. Which is, you have to do more with your geometry, right? Is if you have a bit more of a curve now and again in some of the pieces, in some of the beams, like tiny little things, right? Like this kind of stuff works awesome. I love that because it adds like a really interesting like silhouette, like a nice little breakup. So if you find ways to do that with some of these beams as well, that is going to be more than enough to like sell the appeal that it's like handmade, right? And then you could kind of see, maybe what you could do is try to push the colors a little bit more so that they deviate like a little bit more. I don't know. You could kind of see like, again, I'm referring to Jack Jasmine work in this case a lot, right? But you can see that she still does like a lot of breakup. And again, if you zoom out, it's not apparent, but if you zoom in, like it becomes apparent that there is breakup there, right? So maybe give that a look as well. Give it a try. But yeah, what I would do is more geometry. And then number 2 would be, then I would be looking at texture. Texture breakup. Because even if you were to do the texture breakup, like we're still dealing with just like straight beams and stuff, right? So that's why I said try to do the geometry thing first and then do the texture thing afterwards. Because in terms of hierarchy, that's going to have like the biggest impact, right? But yeah. Cool. But yeah, I think honestly, this is coming along great though. I love the smoke. The smoke looks awesome. Apart from the stuff that we talked about, of course, but like I really like that it adds like a dynamic nature to the scene. And I think it would be really cool. Yeah, I would really try to figure out like the video, because those videos are always like so interesting. They add so much to the scene. And it would be a shame that we can't see like the smoke and like this thing move. And there's like a couple of elements that could really add like a nice nature to it, right? Maybe you could even have like a rooster, you know? Oh my god, maybe a better looking one that I do. Like a rooster that has like, I don't know, the wind crane. Oh, low battery on my headset. Uh-oh. But yeah, that could also be interesting. I'm just thinking about like tiny moving elements. But yeah, that's more for like finishing touches, you know. Look at it. But yeah, awesome though. Thank you so much for showcasing your work, Keita. Appreciate it a lot. And again, this is coming along like really nicely. Like, yeah, be bold with those colors. And really try to push stuff, right? Especially if we look at the comparison again. Yeah, be bold. Thank you a lot. I'm really motivated to finish the piece soon. Yeah, I think honestly you don't need to do too much on it anymore. It's just like the final bits. Take it into Photoshop, do some post-processing, like really try to push the values. And yeah, have some fun with it, right? But yeah, cool. Thank you so much for showing it off. Great stuff. Alexander's next. I love the render already. Nice and holy. What I would like to know is, does the statue stand out clearly? And do the eyes naturally focus on it? Wait, which one are we talking about? We're talking about this guy, right? Why the hell is it? What? Wait. Oh, if you're going for animated, check out Vertex animation for the butterfly material. It'll really sell it really well for flat textures. As a VFX artist, just wanted to mention it to help. Yeah, thanks, Joppa. Joppa is a professional, so he knows what he's talking about. Alexander saying, yep. This one? Why the... What the fuck's happening with the Shutterstock background image? Is that just like a placeholder thing? Because I thought that this was like... Just because of that, I was like, oh god, like, is this like a turbo squid kind of like thing, you know? But no, it's just placeholder, I'm guessing. It is a cube in the background. Yeah. I assumed as much. Okay, so let me see. I got so distracted by the Shutterstock thing. So does the statue stand out clearly? And do the eyes naturally focus on it? Also, does the composition convey the feeling of a journey? Finding peace in a safe place to be? Yeah, so let's break that down. I don't think it stands out a lot yet. I think you honestly just want to kind of do the same thing as here, where you have like a little bit of a fog card going behind it. Right? Where you push the separation between the background and the statue itself. Because right now they kind of have like very similar values. And also it feels like we have like a lighting going on here, which is quite nice already. So that is working quite nicely, but it doesn't contrast in silhouette enough from the rest of it, right? So yeah, it needs more separation. And you can easily do that by just having like a fog card or something like that. All your lit particles as well here. That's beautiful though. Very serene, very holy. So I like what you've done there. I think once we apply the same sort of like tricks to this, I think you're going to be in a really good spot. Yeah, first we need to separate out the statue from the background a little bit more. Does the composition convey the feeling of a journey, like finding peace and a safe place to be? It does, especially these ones definitely do. Right? These ones definitely have, you've nailed the feeling of like, oh, this is almost like something holy. Right? Like it is saturated, it is just like, this is, you could almost imagine like heaven to be this if you believe in that kind of stuff, right? It's just very, very serene, very peaceful. Is it like God rays? No. It is literally, so what I would do for this kind of stuff, it's literally a plane that has like fog on it, right? A fog card. And then basically you place that like right behind the statue. And then of course you can have like a god ray coming from above as well to like further emphasize, but the god ray is not going to help you separate it from like the background necessarily. It's just going to make it so that people focus more on the statue itself. So you can use them in combination, right? But they kind of serve like a separate purpose, if that makes sense. It's like a god ray, we have that coming from above. That is going to work really nicely as well. And then we have like a fog card or something. Basically what we see here, right? We have the statue is like really clear. Mr. AI Jesus over here is really clear. But then all the stuff behind it, like the pillars and like all the architectural detail, is faded because there's almost like a bloom effect that is kind of happening around the statue, right? So you can kind of achieve that with a, you can do so much cool stuff with a VFX in this case, or like with atmospheric effects, right? Where you have like a fog sheet to like separate the two out. And then you could have like something like volumetric on the top so that like whatever light you're gonna put out there is gonna like catch it like beautifully. And then you could have like the god rays almost coming in as well. They're probably gonna interact with that really beautifully too. But yeah, it's a combination of like a bunch of stuff. But yeah, definitely playing around with like volumetrics is gonna be helpful here. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like naturally focusing on it, I think in terms of the architecture and the way that it's set up, it is, right? So foundationally, I think we're in a good spot. We just have to like really play with the lighting and the atmosphere and all that kind of stuff to make it feel really nice. Like this stuff, right? A fog card is a plane that can cast a shadow. Yeah, I'm almost thinking about it. So when I say these things, right, I'll make it clear by like using an example. I guess this one has it as well. This is a common one that I keep referring to is Auto Ostera. But let me show you what I mean here. So for example, on this page, this is a beautiful image from Otto Ostera. You can see that like the wall is separated in terms of like the intensity of the values by like a bunch of clouds and the fog behind it. And that is just literally to separate like the background, which has like this castle and all that kind of stuff. And separate that from the wall itself, right? The same happens here with this island in the foreground as well. So that island has just like a bunch of cards like behind it just to separate it out from the midground and background details, right? So it's I kind of look at it as like a very concept art way of just like art directing a piece where we can kind of put in like planes to like pull certain areas or like different planes, like foreground, midground, and background, or we can separate elements in the scene. And that is literally what you can do here as well, right? Because we want to separate the statue from the background pillars that kind of have like very similar values in this case. So that's what I'm trying to do. Also, another thing is this is actually working really well in this case, is that the pillars are more simple texturally, right? That's what I'm talking about. I want to be specific. So these have like a relatively simple texture compared to all the folds and the fabric and all that kind of stuff. And the contrast between the two, between the texture, is going to make us focus more on the thing that has more interest. AI Jesus is wild. I know. I know. AI Jesus is wild. Look at him. He's on some stuff. This is creepy. I don't like him anymore. Also, what's up with the hands, man? These are like squid hands almost. Fucking Squidward AI Jesus over here. Bye. Tim, you scammed us. It's Friday. I know. I know. It's Wednesday somewhere, no? Doesn't that work? Would you bake shadow for that piece for a second UV set? Nah. I would avoid like having to bake shadows and all that kind of stuff. I honestly, like, I always will rely on real-time things because it gives you so much flexibility. As soon as I need to bake something, I'm thinking about like, oh God, like it's another step in the thing. Like, honestly, the way that I would do it, if I want to emphasize the statue more with light, I would have a light that is specifically only casting on the statue itself. And by just like setting the radius and like the cone specifically so that only the statue is going to have like light casting on it. And that's a way more flexible way because I can move it around, all that kind of stuff. And if you're really, really concerned about like having lights that only can affect certain items, it's been a while since I've done this, but you can actually set up like different light regions. I forgot the actual name of what it's called, but you can basically set it up so that that light only affects the statue and nothing else in the scene. So that would be another way to do it, like a more advanced way, I guess. But yeah, I would honestly, I prefer to do anything real time with like volumetrics and lights and all that kind of stuff compared to anything baking. Not necessarily saying that like what you would do is wrong, but you're just adding like a step where you have to take it from, oh, there we go, light channels. Thanks, Alexander. Where you're taking an additional step where you have to potentially take it into Substance Painter, then bake a light, and then take it back into Unreal, which might work. I mean, it could definitely work. It's not that it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just, yeah, not my preference. Cool. Thanks, Alexander. Thank you for sharing your work again. Appreciate it. The next one up is Alice. Alice is new, I think. I've not seen Alice before. Or not seen a post, at least. Something new to learn this week. Yeah, I've only used it once. So I don't know how interesting it's going to be. If you're doing lighting full time, I guess that it's going to be really interesting. But otherwise, I've not used it in any of my work. So not sure if you need to learn it. It's one of those things where it's good to know it when you need it, but it's not required kind of knowledge. Cool. So this is from Alice. This is an organic environment I made recently during my university module. I mean, a means of polishing and rendering this out. All feedback on how to further the quality through lighting, composition, and editing. Okay. We have a lot of noise going on. A lot of similarities in colors as well, especially comparing to the reference, right? So let's talk about a couple things. Okay, this is going to be weird for a bit, but I might as well just shut down my headphones already and get them to recharge, because otherwise it's going to be awkward in a sec. Hold on. Okay, I think we're back on track. Get that charging already. Let's have a look. That's a bumpy track. It really is. It really is. Back. Oh, I hate it. I hate it. I just made a dad joke. No. See, I saying, I had a friend show me lighting channels. Still forget how to use them effectively, but they are super helpful. Wait, how does that work, Sia? You don't know how to use them, but they're super effective and helpful. Huh? Yeah, they can be in like specific cases, right? Like I said, I've only used them once really. So yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, anything can be helpful, right? Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to talk about is lots of visual noise. What is happening is that we have a lot of stuff going on. So like the lighting itself, we have a lot of god rays that are adding a lot of complexity to the lighting, which you don't need. For example, this area has a lot of like these like individual like god rays going on, which adds a lot of complexity to the scene that is already really complex by itself, because you have a lot of foliage, and that foliage is already really dense in the amount of detail. So that's the second biggest thing here, is the density of the foliage, right? So this is a real exercise into how you make something look clean while still retaining, like, we're in the middle of the forest, right? So we want to have noise, but we want to have delegated noise, or we want to have more control over like the amount of noise that we add. For example, this section is like really dense. I would honestly clean this up, which means like no foliage or barely any foliage, and go for simpler shapes. The reason why I say this section is because this section is basically where we see the most of the track, right? It's like right in front of us, because this section, we don't see the track anymore. This is kind of at an awkward angle, so we can't really see it. This is really visible, but it's only a tiny section. So I want to kind of see like more of the track, and also just clean up. Clean up the amount of detail that there is. So yeah, I would definitely clean up that area. No foliage, so like less noise. I think that's going to be really helpful already. The next thing that is adding to visual noise is shadows and contrast. So what is happening is we have a lot of contrast happening in the scene in places where we don't really need it, right? So A good visualizer is that a lot of contrast in this scene happens because we have a very clean shape, or relatively clean shape. We have this clean shape obviously as well. And then the rest of it becomes like really, really dense, right? And this is, again, like really dense. And again, this top shape is also just like really dense. Let us visualize that for a second, right? So same thing here as well. What happens is, with contrast, is that we are going to be looking for the outlier in the scene usually, right? So that's why this photograph works really well, because the outlier here are like the clean shapes, and the clean shapes is the thing that actually adds a story to the scene, right? So we focus on like these two areas first because they are clean. They're basically the calm within the storm, right? So that's where we go, because a lot of the other noise is like really overwhelming. So that's why we look for the opposite thing, right? Where in a clean scene, we look for the thing that has the most detail because that is the most visually interesting. So that is, it's almost like the inverse, where in this scene, we're trying to escape from the detail. Whereas in other scenes that are clean, we try to go towards the detail because that's the most interesting thing. But in this scene, for example, like the water is also like way noisier. There's a lot of like, you know, it's a running stream, so there's going to be a lot of noise in that. And the rest of the scene is really noisy too. And then we get maybe this little sliver of ease, I guess. And then maybe there's like a little thing over here as well. But I mean, we don't care about that because it's so far off, right? So that's what I mean. You unintentionally probably like just inverted the scene by making the thing that needs to be oh my god, there we go again. Freaking chat just completely shitting itself. Why is it doing that though? Let's see. Yeah. So yeah, you inadvertently just like inverted the whole thing, and you made the thing that should be the rest, you made that like more detailed than it needs to be. So yeah, cleaning this area up and making sure that like the main track comes out more in front of you is probably going to be like really helpful to the scene. Number 2. Let's see. I mean, do we even need a number 2? Because I think that really is like the majority of the thing. Yeah, honestly, that is like the biggest part of the scene that I would probably want to talk about, honestly. So yeah, I think honestly the next thing would be, if you've done all of that, is playing around with the post-processing. So taking it into Photoshop, doing a little bit of post-processing, like all that kind of stuff is definitely going to be helpful, by just trying to get like a better color balance, right? Because right now everything is like just really green and slightly orange, but we can get like a much interesting color balance. For example, here, right, where you have like a contrast between like the natural browns and then like the intense greens. Like it's a bit more balanced, even though it's like intense, right? And you're probably not going for that, but yeah, that's what I would say. So best of luck, Alice. Like, yeah, all this stuff is like relatively easy to do because it comes down to placing and like iterating on like a couple of things that need to be cleaned up. Shadows and contrast, that's probably going to be the biggest annoyance, because it comes down to like, okay, where do I put lighting? Like how do I do probably like subsurface scattering on the trees, maybe let more sun through. I think this is, I don't know if these are like Megascan assets or not, because otherwise you might be in luck. If you've done them yourself, you might need to look into adding subsurface scattering into your shader as well. But yeah, cool stuff, Alice. Thank you for sharing your work, and best of luck with the course. Next up is that. Hey, okay. So we have a little bit more variation in the scene. That's awesome to see. That's cool. I like that you added that stuff to it. When it comes to a project on my portfolio, should I give as much information as possible? Nope. Time lapses, material shots, asset layout, material graphs, or is it better to have multiple shots to break down each part, or is it better to have one post? Is there so much thing? Is there such a thing as too much information? Yes, there is. So it's a good question. How should we break that down though? Let's start with your questions, right? So the way that I would break it down, like your scene, is in terms of priority, right? If we move these guys like to the left. Oh, and I think I didn't even add this one. So add this one here. Let's just all move this to the side. So that I have a little bit of stuff that I can do here. So in terms of priorities, right? So first one is definitely just like your visual impact, right? Like, does it look cool? Does it tell a story? Like, is it interesting to look at? Like, all that kind of stuff I kind of just like add to like the visual aspect. The second thing when it comes to conveying the information, right? So the way that I set up your portfolio post is your first section is going to be visuals, right? Second area is going to be your breakdowns. What you want to do with your breakdowns is you want to make them condensed. You want to make them condensed, and you want to keep the person's time in mind. So this is an oversimplified view, but let's say for your visuals, try to condense the video to like what matters the most. Have like a couple of main shots and then go into the breakdown, right? And in the breakdown, you can then be like, okay, this is how I did this thing, and that thing. But you still want to be attentive of a person's time, right? Because for example, what we could do is say, and I'm going to make, I don't know, a silly over exaggeration, right? So let's say, okay, here's my hero prop breakdown, and first image is the prop itself, right? Second image is like all my texture maps. Cool. Third image is like my wireframes and all that kind of stuff. Fourth image is like another thing. All this kind of stuff can be condensed into a single image that's maybe a GIF or something like that, where you really think about the layout of that item. And then you can be like, okay, so I'm going to have my prop here. I'm going to have my layouts and my textures over here, more information over here. And then, yeah, maybe we split this in two and I have like a wireframe on top and like that at the bottom, right? That is what I mean. Like, that's where the presentation comes down to, like, okay, you took the production of the environment seriously. Now we need to take the presentation of the environment seriously as well. And that just takes time, iteration, sharing it with friends and being like, hey, does this make sense? Like, what I'm showing you, like, does it all make sense? Like, is that the way that you understand what I did? Because honestly, for most environments that I see that do multiple posts, they do not need multiple posts. They're just wasting. Well, they're either doing two things, right? So either they're adding a second post to their portfolio because they think that like more stuff is better, which it is not. Because if you think about it, you're wasting people's time, right? Because they have to click on the first post and then, oh, okay, there's a breakdown here as well. Okay, click on the breakdown. And then if they want to go back to the original, yeah, you're making them click back and forth. That's just like a huge waste of time, right? What I would do is try to condense that information all into one post. And if it is really interesting, people will watch. It's just up to you to make it really interesting. Because there are station posts out there that have been shared around and that people say, oh my God, this is a good breakdown. Try to find those posts and see what makes it a good breakdown. Because those are the people that you want to replicate, right? And it's usually the people that take extra time and effort to do their presentations well. And they really thought about, okay, how do I convey this amount of information with the least amount of visual clutter? That's what it comes down to. So yeah. So no, it's not better to have multiple posts. I think honestly, yeah, the majority of people that I see do them is just, yeah, it's just a waste. Is there such a thing as too much information? I don't think so. Like, I kind of, in the beginning I said yes, but I think there's no such thing as too much information that is presented well, because I have looked at like some of those breakdowns, the really good ones, and they have like, I don't know, they have 50 images, but they have done it in such a way where like it makes sense. I'm following a story and like, okay, oh, this is really cool what they did here. Okay, cool. What did I do next? You know, and like everything is kind of new, and they cut out like all the fluff. There's no fluff. There's not just like a singular image that's there like throwaway thing. No, everything is purpose driven. So yeah, really think about that, because it's so important. Like, I don't even know how to like convey this properly, but we spend so much time. Let's do a little graph, right? So, okay, let's do a tiny graph over here. Right, so we spend, let's see if we can even get it on here. Right, so that's the amount spent on my environment. And this is usually the amount of time that people spend on a presentation. That doesn't make sense, because this is what people actually see, right? They don't see this. No one sees that. They see it like this. So it's up to you to take a little bit of extra time here so that this is not a waste. And that's what presentation is all about, right? It's like you want to convey all the trials and tribulations and all the things that you learn, but you don't want to make it boring for other people, or you want to teach other people a lesson, or you want to add value through that, right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that comes down to, yeah, again, the story of this place, right? That's why I hammer so much on the story, because you can then use that same story and be like, oh, they use this material to write on, so I'm gonna present my images on that material as well, right? And I'm gonna do some like cool stuff in Photoshop on top of it, or I'll present it as a book, or I don't know, you can do like a bunch of cool stuff. Obviously, you have to make sure that it's not like too, I don't know, like too cringy or too like, It needs to be well done, right? Let's see. Any notes on the color, the composition, or the materials? I mean, there's a lot here, right? So then the composition of this one, of the bottom right one, works really nice. I think the improvements that you made on like the top down shot work really good as well. I had a look at the video. The river one makes more sense now. It's a little bit overblown in terms of like this god ray kind of coming in, which is just like it's washing out the entire scene, which is Yeah, it's just not that great necessarily. But yeah, I mean, overall it's looking quite nice. Plus also, I mean, correct me if you're wrong, but I don't think you have the time to do like massive adjustments anyway, right? Isn't it like getting close to like delivery time? So at this point, I would honestly just focus on small wins, like small wins that can have like a big impact on the scene, right? Presentation is going to be one. Yeah, I just presented today actually. Okay, so how did I go with that? How did it go? And then in the meantime, you're asking the foreground element in the first and the last shot. Wait, is that from the video or from the thing that you sent? Let's see. Oh, so I guess it's from this guy, right? They loved it. That's good. Awesome to hear. Yeah, no, I think you got some good stuff here in terms of foreground, right? You got the tree already. What you kind of need to be careful with the tree is that you add like a little bit more geometry to it, right? So that you have like, this looks like a nicely like sculpted tree or whatever. You can still use like the same tileable and stuff, but just add like a little bit more geometry. And then it kind of feels like it's more organic, right? And then in terms of foreground, there's not really like a singular item that is like really good to make like a foreground element out of. You can literally use anything. But the thing that I would recommend is using like depth of field to kind of just help you with that. So DOF, depth of field. Because what that is going to do is it's going to fade out like the textures and it's going to kind of make like the foreground elements more blurry, which means that we're going to be pulling more attention towards like the thing that actually matters, right? Like the last thing in the scene. So that is like, if you're doing something for your presentation, that is one of those small wins, right? Like the depth of field thing, that is like relatively small, but it's going to have a huge impact on your scene as well. Because we're gonna go more down like the cinematic route in that case, right? So depth of field, your aspect ratio as well. Going for like a cinematic aspect ratio is always more interesting. But yeah. So there's no like set foreground element that's really good. And I think yours work well already. Let me see. You've got like the tree on the left, because the images are like a little bit different because you do have like the tree going up here as well. So I would say, if we're being really nitpicky, right, then if you're doing a foreground element here, I kind of want to make it feel more like, I don't know, like a root structure or something like that, where you have like gnarly little roots that are coming down. Because that makes more sense, right? And then we have like a differentiation between like, oh, this is the tree going up, and this is like some gnarly roots that are just like coming down from the tree again. And you could potentially do that on the other side as well. Potentially. Potentially be interesting. But yeah, cool stuff. That I'm happy that it went well. That is freaking awesome. So congratulations on finishing it. Yeah, take your time with the presentation. Get that on your portfolio. It's gonna be amazing, man. Great job, and I'm proud of you for finishing it. It's looking great. It's gonna be cool to have on your portfolio too. All right. Swiftly moving on then. Thanks for all the critiques. No worries. Happy to help. Happy to help. Happy that I could just add my little... Oh my god, what would be like a good saying? I don't know. Throw my 2 cents into the mix. That's what I'll say. Giovanni, here's the latest renders of my scene. I've been getting some amazing feedbacks along with yours, so I have some things in mind. Nice. I love some extra feedbacks you have on these renders, but I actually came to ask on some tips on to make decals. I've never made one, so still a bit confused on how to start. Hey Giovanni, thanks for bearing with us for the session. Currently I have these ones in mind, so mold dripping, something to break up the roughness of the water, and then the edges for the broken ceiling. Okay. Yeah. So these three basically, right? So the mold is actually pretty easy. That is just like a texture that you get from like textures.com or CG textures or whatever. It's probably going to be the easiest thing. If you just want to be like really lazy about it and like really quick, that's probably the way that you do it. Otherwise, you could, so let's say for this one, so for the mold, CG textures, or you could replicate this kind of like this streaky sort of look, and then just do it in like Substance Designer, right? I've done a couple of those. They're always like pretty fun. I mean, I love Designer. You could potentially also do it in, you could do it in Painter as well. Just get like a plane, just use it, just, yeah, unwrap on a plane, and just uniquely texture like 2 sections on it, generate like an opacity map for it, and then you've got, yeah, you've got yourself a little mold section, you know, that you can just like use as a decal. So yeah, that would be the quickest way to do it. I think you can use bridge decals for this effect. Bridge as in Megascans, right? Megascans bridge. I've not used it myself inside of Unreal, so definitely a thing. If you do not want to create them yourself, you can definitely grab those. For these guys, for the water, yeah, honestly, same thing. If I so I have some stuff lying around for this already. I'll let you know how I did it. So I went and did some scanning, right? I mean, I'm making it sound like way more fancy than it is. What I did, I took a black piece of like plane or something that I can put stuff on. I went to the forest and I basically made like atlases of stuff. So I had like a bunch of like sticks from all kinds of sizes. And I have like one of these guys. Where did I have it? Here we go. Got one of these color checkers, which is basically just you put that next to the picture, and it allows you to like really easily like color calibrate like all your images. These can get quite expensive if you don't need it necessarily. It's really helpful. You can kind of get away with like some stuff. But that meant, so in short, what I did is I went on a scanning trip. I had like loads of sticks, loads of leaves, like loads of like little bits of foliage. I then cleaned all of them up. So cleaned all of them up. And then what I basically did is I made them into like atlases. And then I used those atlases to scatter using an atlas scatter map in Substance Designer. And what I mean with atlases, I literally have like, You know, like one leaf here, one leaf here, one leaf here, one leaf here. And then I use those in Substance Designer to just like scatter them wherever I want. That means that I can just have like, clean up and like generate textures, because I also do like, I generate like some quick normals using Substance and all that kind of stuff. So there's technically like an extra step in here. Let's see. So if we move this sucker down. So create missing textures. Right, so that means I have a base color already. I kind of have, yeah, but this is the thing, right, Giovanni? This is not scanning. This is super simple. It's literally just like going to the forest, taking a piece of paper, taking pictures, cleaning them up, and now you have like atlases that you can reuse. So I wouldn't call it scanning, but this stuff is like the pure basics of getting into this stuff. So really, really like hacky kind of scanning stuff. But that's the way that I would do it. So like Substance Designer, and then I can use that for everything now, right? I use that for my materials, I use that for decals, I use that for everything. But then you literally have to touch grass and it feels wrong. No, you get to appreciate the grass. Come on, go out. It is good. Since I never have made a decal, do you think it's best to make my own alphas, or is it okay to get ones? Oh no, it's totally fine to get one. Sort of in the same line as Joppa was asking as well. What are your thoughts about megascans in portfolio environments? So I don't think it's that big of a deal if you don't use it on things that are yours to showcase, right? So that is my personal opinion on that though. Like for example, in this case, right? Like where Giovanni is like, hey, I've made this whole thing and I just want to have like a couple of decals. I don't think like grabbing a decal from like Megascans in this case is going to be like a deal breaker, right? It gets a little bit more tricky when, well, not really tricky, but let's say you're doing an outdoor scene and you have a ruin in the middle of the forest, but you want the portfolio piece to be about creating the ruin, then just get Megascan trees, right? Like just get trees from Speed Tree, Megascans or whatever, because that's not what you want to focus on. So to me, everything is kind of like a balancing act between like, okay, do I want to get more repetition in, or do I want to get more, more practice in? Or do I just want to go all in and like use all the skills that I've learned and do my own scene where I make everything? But you shouldn't do that in the beginning, because it's just a giant waste of time. Because what happens is in the beginning when you do a scene, and I'm talking from like an environment art perspective, right? So this is the broader aspect of it, is that you're learning so much that by the time that you're comfortable with doing one aspect, the other ones are outdated again. So you end up on this treadmill of just like redoing things in the same scene. Which is why at a certain point I'm just like, no, just replace the trees with Megascan trees. They're good, and it's not the focus on this piece anyway. Yeah. Because also if you look at your portfolio, let's say you have your portfolio up until now as an environment artist and you've not done foliage. That could be like a thing that you could be like, okay, my next piece is going to be foliage only. And then if people come onto your portfolio and they can be like, oh, he hasn't made foliage. Oh no, he has. Latest project, only foliage. Okay, checkbox, right? That's probably like a better way to quicker build a portfolio that is more targeted towards like the skills that you want to showcase anyway. Yeah, it's all about like what you replace, because man, environment art, if you want to do everything yourself, fuck me, it takes a lot of time. And sorry about swearing. Especially with like just the benchmark for portfolio, especially like realistic portfolios, being so high now that, oh my God, so many workflows, so many techniques, so many things you have to know that it's, yeah, it's getting quite ridiculous. But yeah, Giovanni, going back to your topic, watching with my entire family. Oh my God, no. I'll have to put like a content rating on this. Dang it. Advertisers are gonna hate me. But yeah, Giovanni, just to come back to your topic, like it's totally fine to, if you're in the later stages and you're just like, because this is also a big thing, right? Like if you really want to learn how to make decals, do it. If you're at the final stages of this environment and you're like, oh, I need decals, but I just can't be bothered, like just get them from somewhere else, you know? And then whatever you have to do in your portfolio, say like, oh, decals are from like Megascans or whatever, right? But the rest is made by myself. You can kind of spin that in every way you want. You can say like the entire scene is made by myself, apart from the decals. Is this a safe space to say I kind of don't want to? No, that's totally fine, you know? Like, honestly, it is. Because there are things, like, if someone puts, like, a prop in front of me, like, oh my God, I don't want to do props. There's no way. Like, I can do it. Yeah, I can make them look good and all that kind of stuff. I just don't want to. So yeah, I totally get it. In the whole spectrum of environment art, there's gonna be stuff that you're just like, you can't be bothered with it, you know? And sometimes you have to, but I don't think this is one of those cases. We're going to lose our Factor's meal sponsorship, Tim? Dang it. I don't even know what that is. I don't even know that we had a sponsorship, but now we lost it. No. Yeah, but I do feel like you learned a lot already. Oh yeah, Giovanni, like compared to, like, I mean, I'm always reflecting on like the environments that you've done over like the last couple, I guess, years or months. I don't want to make you feel depressed about that timeline, but it takes time, right? It takes a lot of time. And this stuff, like this environment, came out really, really nice. I mean, you're still not done yet, right? But this looks awesome, man. So great job. Cool. Moving swiftly on then to McFal. Last one for today. Questions. Thank you so much for putting the questions in there. Everyone who did, always appreciate it. How's the cliff currently looking in terms of noise levels and shape? Good question. So in terms of noise levels, the way that I would always approach this, and I'm not sure how your workflow is going to be, but in terms of noise levels, I would say the small detail, I would let the texture take care of that. So I'm not sure if you're gonna generate textures from Houdini or if you're gonna use a tileable or whatever the workflow is here, right? But the small detail, that should be a texture. It's about 30 meters tall. Yeah, that's big. But yeah, I would still do like some of this like generated stuff. I would potentially focus on like getting more high to mid frequency detail, and then let the tileable take care of like this smaller stuff. So I'm literally talking about like this surface level stuff, right? Like the bumpiness, the chips and all that kind of stuff. I would honestly focus more on getting chunky shapes that then also just like, you have like bigger cuts that just like break up some of the surfaces, right? Get some of those like shapes more well defined, and then just leave the small stuff to like the texture. That's the way that I would do it. And I would potentially find a way to like break up some of the edges as well, because most of the edges are just like very similar. Right, and I kind of want to see like a big edge kind of like broken up, but like that goes into a like smaller edge and kind of has like a chipped up thing again. Because I do get the feeling that you went way too quickly into the surface level, where I still want to see a breakup of the bigger shapes first before we then do the surface treatment or like the secondary details, right? Again, I can highly recommend a workshop from Ivana that we did quite a while back now, but it's still relevant for this stuff, even if it's not like using like brushes or sculpted stuff. Still highly relevant because she talks about this stuff, right? Like the small, the big, medium, small details and how you should approach them. This stuff is really, really good for that. So big edge breakup, that's what we're looking for. And then we can focus on like smaller, I don't know, carved in sections that are probably like a little bit more pronounced, right? And really play around with that. Does the horizontal breakup work or should I refine it more? It's basically what I was just saying, right? Like I'm kind of expecting, the general pattern is there, but I'm expecting a bigger breakup to happen. So yeah, just if you have something like this where it actually like cuts into like the silhouette and it breaks up the whole piece. Right, so if we were to see it from the side, for example, that would actually like have like a crack in the silhouette. Right, because right now I do like the way that we have like the stratification going on, but it is not really changing the silhouette, so it feels like surface level, right? We need to emphasize it more, I feel. And have like bigger breakup. Anything that stands out or looks weird currently? And I've been thinking about using vertex color data instead of RGB masks to assist in texturing for the rock. Would it be a good idea? Or should I stick to RGB masks? That is honestly something that you should try. Was it the workshop that you posted some shorts from? Yeah, exactly. That's the one. So yeah, when it comes to vertex color data or RGB masks, I would give it a try. I think it's gonna be easier, and it's definitely gonna be easier to just do like RGB masks. Because in your case, you're doing it differently, right? Like what you can do is you can build that into the workflow within Houdini. Where my approach, it was different. I was just doing it in Blender, and then I was taking it into the engine, and I wanted to do as much as I could in the engine, right? So in your case, I think it would probably be more interesting to do it in the RGB masks. Because you have more flexibility and you're already doing it. Well, you have the opportunity to do it inside of Houdini anyway. And then if you're trying to make a statement of like, hey, look, I've made this tool that can generate rocks, then I would expect it to also generate like the masks and like all that kind of stuff too, right? So might as well make the whole thing. That's kind of my thing that I'm thinking about. But yeah, that's the way that I'm thinking about it. So I feel like honestly, we need an environment art course or tutorials from you. Yeah, I do want to do more like the one live workshop that I did. That was really cool. I have some ideas for other ones. Hopefully in the future, like my schedule is going to clear up a little bit more, and then it will be nice if we can do more stuff. But yeah, thanks for saying so. Yeah, so what I was just thinking, I'm gonna make it really simple. It's up to you. And the reason why I say that is because you can probably also just generate like vertex color data inside of Houdini. And that could be like a really interesting way to then get really experimental and see if you can transfer that data and make more interesting maps than I could do inside of Unreal Engine by like baking with the modeling tools that they have. So yeah, I would honestly leave it up to you and do some experimentations, like which is like the most like flexible for your pipeline, honestly. Because yeah, I didn't figure this out in the beginning either when I was doing the medieval scene. I just got so fed up by having to go back to Painter, generate masks, take those masks out, and then set them all up in like a new material instance. It was just so cumbersome. So I would say basically where your technical art brain comes in, right? Like that question should be something that you figure out by trial and error and then figuring out the solution for your own workflow issues, right? So yeah. I didn't know you did workshops before. Oh, there's only one time that I did like myself, like I did like a live thing talking about like how to start environments. That's the only one that I did. But then we have like a bunch of other workshops that we do with like other industry professionals. So yeah. Yeah, it is on the channel. Yep. It is. I'll send the link as well. Let me see. Where is it? So let's see. Oh, I did just close it. Dang it. Bum, bum, bum. There we go. That's the one that I did. Okay, cool. But yeah, have fun with that, Mike. Have fun with that. Sorry, I did run out of time though. Oh, let's see. Let's make it. Let's have a quick look. No, honestly, I do have to go though. So, yeah, appreciate it, Macfal. I'm looking forward to the next update though. Like post one next week, and then we'll have a thorough look at it, see what you come up with. Yeah, no worries, Macfal. All right, people. With that said, I'm heading out because I have to do the dishes. So I'll speak to you all later. Next week we're back on Wednesday, so enjoy this very unique session of Whip Friday. But next week we're back on Wednesday to our normal schedule. So I'll see you next week on Wednesday. Bye-bye.